Let's check out some Rogue Trader era artwork.
This is a Rogue Trader and his entourage, I believe. The actual Rogue Trader is the chap in the bottom left with the wonderful facial hair. Interestingly, he reminds me of a man I used to work with called Simon. I was kind of hoping I would never have to see his face again. Oh well. Our Rogue Trader is sporting a fantastic futuristic eye patch. It looks like it's made of that stretchy material that they give you as a wristband door key at Center Parcs. If you don't know what Center Parcs is, it's a holiday camp place in the UK. I actually really like going there, although it's massively overpriced. The eye patch has a couple of feathers sticking out of it. I'm not sure if they're part of the eye patch or just tucked in behind it. If they were tucked in, I feel they would be rather uncomfortable though. The rest of the Rogue Trader's clothes look like some sort of medieval ensemble to me. I'm no expert in medieval fashion, but this looks exactly how I would imagine it. I have a funny feeling a lot of the old Warhammer Fantasy Empire miniatures wore clothes like this, with puffy sleeves and big collared boots. To offset the medieval look, the Rogue Trader has a massive armoured collar. Why on earth you would only want to put collar armour on is beyond me, but I assume there is a legit reason for it. There's also a pipe attached to it. Maybe it blows nice cool air in if it gets hot. On his waist, he's carrying a pair of pistols. I would imagine they are an expensive antique set, knowing Rogue Traders. He also appears to have some sort of pet lizard thing. Does it have a name? Does anyone recognise it? It's also either got a really weird tongue or it's holding something in its mouth. Okay, moving on to the chap standing next to him. I think this is an army veteran of sorts. He has some very sharp and nasty looking bionics on his head, like a pair of Poundland headphones with a metal plate stuck over his eye. His armour is a very interesting design indeed. It almost looks like Dark Eldar armour plate. On his shins are what look to be colonial marine armour from the movie Aliens. There's always a few nods to those movies. This guy's gun actually looks a fair bit like a bolter for once, although it is very short. Maybe it's a bolt pistol. I think he's also wearing a Space Marine backpack. I don't think these were limited to just Space Marines back then, but I might be wrong though. At the bottom right is a squat. It's really hard to get these confused. They are easily recognisable. For some reason, the squat's hat is really tight. It looks like a clam or a scallop clamping down on his head, and it looks uncomfortable for sure. The squat does, however, have a fantastic beard, a beard I wish I could grow. Usually squats wear that sort of padded quilted jacket, but this guy has something that looks more like Captain America's chainmail. I do think it is meant to be the quilted stuff though. The squat is also wearing an interesting pair of checkered leggings or tights. I've never seen this before or since, and it's a great fashion statement. Maybe he stole them from a harlequin, a short one. Attached to his shoulder is what I reckon is a camera, again like the ones the colonial marines had in Aliens. He's also holding a knife in his hand. Could this be a power dagger? It has a power cable attached to it. Well, I assume it's a power cable. He's holding a gun in his other hand, a gun that I don't recognise. Have you got any ideas what it could be? Moving on to the top left of the picture, we have an Eldar, or I should say Eldari. Viewers of a certain age will understand what I mean when I say this chap looks like Lamal. He has beautiful hair. He also reminds me of a guy I used to work with who had the nickname Lamal. His name was Rory. I very much doubt he's watching, but if you are, hello Rory. The Eldar is wearing a chest plate that looks suspiciously like a Blood Angel's chest plate. something like what the Sanguinary Guard would wear. He's also got blood drips on the leg. Did he steal this armour from a blood angel? Did he win it in a card game? Was it a gift? Nobody knows. Around his neck is a gorgeous fur collar. It's very 80s themed fashion. Not that I know much about 80s fashion, I just imagine it is. The weapon the Eldar is carrying is unknown to me. It's a pattern and design that I don't recognise. It's got a wooden stock, which is interesting. At first I thought he was holding a shell under his arm, but it's his helmet, isn't it? We're now going to move on to the young lady in the middle of the piece. She looks a little sad, doesn't she? I wonder why that is. She has a fantastic head of green hair. Is it coloured or is it natural? Nobody knows. We also have yet another eye patch. What's with all the eye patches in the Entourage, eh? We also have a return to the massive shoulder pad collar things. This time it looks a little bit like a yoke or an anvil with a hole in it, worn like a poncho. It's bizarre. Her belt and chest pipe look a lot like the belt and pipe layout from a Mark VI Space Marine set of armour, which is very intriguing. Maybe this is an early form of power armour. Instead of a hand, the young lady appears to have a power pincer. It looks a bit orky, doesn't it? I don't fancy shaking her hand in a hurry. In her other hand is a pistol which I don't recognise. Alright then, our last man now up there in the top right corner. He looks like some sort of monk or priest, so it's possible he's a member of the ecclesiarchy. He actually reminds me of the chap offering the pills in Total Recall, who talks about being lobotomized. On his chest and cheek are blue markings, but do not recognise these and have no idea what they are or what they mean. If any of you know, then please feel free to let us all know in the comments below. He's also wearing the most awesome pair of blue slippers that I've ever seen. I'm jealous and I would like a pair for myself. Strapped to his waist is another contraption. I usually refer to these things as Game Boys. It's just a block with a screen and a few buttons. Although his screen looks like it's made of metal. Maybe it's a fake one. Usually, I struggle to identify the weapons, or they're just invented by the artist for the picture, but this time I'm pretty sure that's a lasgun, although the tip looks a bit more bally than barrely. Like a miniature boxing glove. Maybe it's a grenade launcher. I used to have a toy gun as a kid that would fire plastic grenades like that. I had completely forgotten about it until now. The style of the lasgun looks more like the pattern that the Katachan use, rather than any others. If you were wondering what the best lasgun patterns are, well, it's the Rizar and Akatran. They look the best. This is a truly fantastic piece of art, and worthy of being framed and hung on the wall. My name's Marcel, and this is Snakeworks. Now, I think that might have been the longest picture review that I've ever done. There's still another 11 to go, so I hope you've got your snacks and drinks at the ready. Let's jump in. Welcome to Lowestoft. I'm sure I used to go for drinks here in my youth, although this picture looks a little more civilised. This is a very busy piece. There's a lot going on here. Now, this was used for a little background piece in Rogue Trader. It portrays a world known as Logan's World, a world that's periodically cut off from the Imperium due to being in the Eye of Terror and warp storms. I'm not sure if a world in the Eye of Terror should be this civil, but this is old lore. I guess the Eye of Terror was a little different back then. There are rather a few people in this scene. I think a fair few of them could be described as thugs, much like people in Lowestoft. There also appears to be a squat hanging about in the bar. I do like his acid face t-shirt. I thought they were a 90s thing. Now, the young lady on the right is wearing some interesting attire, and although her belly button looks like an eye, she is also wearing a star on her forehead. I wonder what this could mean. The face paint style reminds me of Ziggy Stardust. The standing thug with the long wispy hair is holding what I think is a glass bottle. The glass bottle has a sticker on the bottom. I can't quite make out what it says. Cats? Is it cats something? I'm not sure. Finally, at the table in the foreground is another thug, a bald thug. This chap appears to be arm wrestling with a weapon, with a pistol. It looks like there's something in his hand, but I'm not sure. Here we have what I believe is an astropath, being flanked by a pair of custodies. Could this be Malcador? Is this an early representation of him? It is possible, I suppose, but I don't think he existed in the lore at this point. Now, for reasons unknown, our astropath looks a little sad, a little upset or melancholy. He actually looks like he's just been evicted from his home by the custodies. Slung around his shoulder is what at first I thought was a WWF wrestling belt, but now I see it's just some sort of handbag or satchel. Also, I think they changed the name of WWF to WWE at some point, and I don't know why. As I said earlier, these are the old Custodies designs. Although I'm not a fan of their toplessness, I do like their masks, although they have an Eldar look to them. The built-in ski goggles are awesome. They also don't appear to cover the whole head, just the face I think. I need some other angles to be sure. Our Custodies also appear to be wearing snake skin leggings. These look very similar to the ones that Brian Fury wears in Tekken. I actually wanted a pair of snakeskin trousers once, and I don't know why that was. The Custodies on the right hand of the picture is also carrying his blankie. I assume he has to take it everywhere.
Aren't comforters weird? When I was growing up, my cousin had one. It was a blue blanket thing that he had to take everywhere. It was called his Woolly. Woolly, O-O-L-Y, or double L-Y. Now, even as a kid, I found that thing quite bizarre. I guess you either get it or you don't. Did any of you have a comforter? If so, let us all know in the comments below.
Okay, so answers on a postcard to the usual address. Is this a guardsman or a space marine? At first I said guardsman, but now looking at his armour, I think it could quite easily be a space marine. There's a helmet ring there and some shoulder pads, although they are small ones. If he is a marine, then he's either lost his helmet or just chosen not to wear it. I suppose it could have been damaged enough to make it unusable. He does, however, have fantastic face paint. He could be a member of Adam and the Ants. Prince Charming indeed. I wonder if the dates line up for that to be an inspiration. Now I'll have to put it out there that I think this is the single best hairstyle I think I've ever seen. A bald head with little pigtails above the ears. I've never seen this in real life, but I feel I need to now. It's a beaut. There's a lot of weathering on the Marine's armour. I especially like the little crater on his chest. I feel this might need emulating on some miniatures in game. It's a little different to your usual chips and scratches, isn't it? Now, what sort of weapon do you think that is? I myself would probably say it's an autogun of sorts. It's definitely not a bolter. Now, back in the Rogue Trader era, there were little slogans dotted about everywhere on people's armour. This one says, Gung Ho. I just need to write a list of all the little slogans I see so I can apply them to my own retro paint jobs. Well, this is interesting, isn't it? This is an early exploded diagram of Mark VI Space Marine armour. As we all know, Mark VI armour is the best mark of armour. Now, a while ago, I asked people what the ribbed pipes were made of on Space Marine armour. Well, this answers it. It is in fact rubber. Well, it was at this point in the lore. If you have a look at the Marine's backpack, you will see that those little pods on the sides are not exhausts like many think, but they are in fact stabilising jets. Poor man's jump packs, if you will. I would assume this is for low gravity operations. Top left is a cutaway to something they call a nerve electrode. This looks like a nasty little spike that plugs into your back somewhere. Do you think it's like the little sockets that they have in the Matrix? If you have a look at the feet of the Marine, it states that there are retractable spikes. The only Space Marine miniature I think I've ever seen the spikes extended on are Ragnar Blackmane's. Were there any others? On the backpack are solar panels apparently. Are they the sort of fin parts or just the plating itself? If it's the fin parts, that explains those things and why they are there. You can also see the Comms Marine head extension piece that was on Brother Orinoco, an early Mark VI metal sculpt, and I think it has a Forge World version today. Back in the day, I thought it was a different helmet entirely, so it's interesting to see it's just an add-on as it were, an accessory. I feel that most of these little details have either been forgotten, don't exist anymore, or have evolved into other things. It's nice to see the origins.
Now I think this might be the reason I like Mark VI armour the most. It was the first proper Space Marine set that I had. The 10-man Imperial Space Marines boxed set, not the 30-man one. They re-released it as a 10-man squad. I think it cost a $5. Anyway, I did actually have Mark VII Space Marines first, but they came in the Space Crusade board game, so they don't really count, do they? They are interesting miniatures in themselves though, so I think that's something we're going to have a look at a later time.
Here we have my neighbour's dog. I think this is referred to in the monsters section of the Rogue Trader rulebook as an astral hound. I think they vanish from the lore pretty much immediately after this, unless I'm mistaken, and someone will surely let me know. To me, this literally just looks like the image of a dog that's glitching out. Maybe like some sort of hologram, similar to the ones they have in Star Wars with the sound effects. I like those. I have a feeling the dog is based on a pit bull terrier. It has that same sort of fat, chunky head look to it. Now, word on the street is that pit bull terriers are nasty, savage dogs. I've never met one in the flesh, so I can't confirm either way. The back end of the dog, where the glitching is occurring, actually looks to me like the tessellated glitching effect some of the newer Necrons have. Is this a coincidence, do you think? Is this dog a Necron's pet? You decide. How bloody amazing is this piece? It's so good. What we have here is an Imperial Guard landspeeder. The Guards certainly don't get these anymore. So back in the olden days, the Imperial Guard had access to things like the Rhino, the Land Raider, and of course, the Landspeeder. I think it's a shame they don't have them these days. I think with Primaris getting their own new stuff, maybe the Guard could have them back? Come on Games Workshop, make Guard cool again. Also, Solar Auxilia are nowhere near as cool as Rogue Trader era Imperial Guard. The Landspeeder is equipped with some wonderful looking weapons. We can clearly see an assault cannon hanging down below, but what is that on the top? This gun looks to me a lot like the heavy bolter from the original Orc buggy. I think it's the general fat body with that sort of spring looking barrel. It looks like it could fire small blue hedgehogs. Now, from what I remember, the actual miniature itself didn't have either of these weapons. It had a heavy plasma gun and something else which I've forgotten. Now, I myself have always imagined landspeeders as just sort of floating a few meters above the ground, almost hugging the terrain. But this one is way up there in the sky. You can see a destroyed truck below them, giving you an idea of the height. I'm sure they're capable of these heights, I just never really imagined it. I do enjoy the way both the riders are controlling the craft. They both have their hand wrapped around a little stick. Are they fighting over which way they want to go? Who is really in control? Is one a fake controller like a baby's steering wheel in a car? What do you guys think? I think the strangest thing of all though is the little sticker on the front. To me, the sticker looks like a face, but not just any old face. Oh no, it looks like a certain German dictator. It even has a little moustache and everything. I wonder if that was intentional.
I seem to see faces in things all the time. Like when you see faces in clouds and shapes like cars or hot air balloons. I'm sure I read though it's a common thing for us humans to find faces in things. I wonder why that is.
This is a car. There's probably not much to say about it, is there? Well, let's dive a little deeper and see what we can spot. Now, as we all know, cars are actually a rare sight in the hobby side of 40k. I'm not sure a kit or a model of a car even exists. Sure, you get your trucks like the Goliath and Tower Rocks, but no cars, and there's not many cars in the art either. Back in Rogue Trader era times, they weren't actually referred to as cars, but they were in fact known as road wheelers. I feel the need to say that in the same manner as the Road Warrior. Let me know if you get the reference, and I've just messed my throat up. To me, this car looks very similar to a few of the vehicles in Blade Runner. They have the same sort of bulbous tipped wheel areas. I think they were known as spinners. I'm not sure all of those had wheels though. I need to go and look that up. The car actually reminds me of some of those very early Jaguar cars, the really rare ones. Is it an XJ13? They had loads of cool panel lines and rivets, and had an almost aircraft look to them. They're beautiful. This sort of car would make a fantastic basis for a Gene Stealer cult limo. It just needs extending a bit. I wonder if there's a spinner model kit that you could kit bash with the Jaguars to build it. Might have to look into that, you know. Although this sort of curved style looks a bit out of place for an Imperial vehicle in 40k. I suppose the Custodies have curved stuff though. You never know, it might fit in okay. Here we have another Rogue Trader era Space Orc. He looks great, doesn't he? So, other Rogue Trader orcs we've looked at have always looked a little odd, usually a bit doggy style. This one doesn't look doggy, he looks rather up to date, rather modern. Although his torso is considerably less bulky than the massive orc torsos we all know and love today. Well, orc fans love them. What I do find rather weird is the orc's chest plate, or shirt. It's got a weird texture to it. My first comparison was a corn on the cob, but it also looks a bit like turtle shell or a plastic hand grenade toy that you might get as a kid. Now, talking of turtle shells, his elbow armour looks a lot like the Koopa shells from Super Mario Kart. It's a shame the picture isn't in colour, or we'd be able to see if it was a homing shell or not. Was it green for manual aiming and red for homing? So what was the blue shell for? I've completely forgotten. The orc's gun is quite strange, isn't it? It doesn't look like your typical orc weapon to me, although I do have to admit again I'm no orc weapon expert. I would assume it's some sort of orky variation of a bolter, but the barrel looks more like a rifle to me. Also, is he holding the magazine at the front? Whatever's going on, I think it's an awesome picture.
I wonder what the brief for the 40k artists was back when Rogue Trader was being produced. Here you go, Dave. There's some miniatures. Just make some art of those. No, it doesn't matter what they look like. Doesn't matter what they're doing. Yeah, just stick anything in the background. Something like that. There wasn't anything else to go on, was there? There was just the miniatures. Must have been so freeing. Is that a word, freeing? Feels like it is.
Well, this is a very strange picture, isn't it? There's a lot of weird things going on here when you look a bit closer. So I think the guy front and centre is a Space Marine, a Techmarine. There's also a few more dotted around the room. In the centre of the picture, something strange is going down. To me, what we have is a man in a giant test tube being carried by some sort of sci-fi forklift that is in turn being driven by a sheep. I think these sheep people are the early Mechanicum designs. Even stranger is what looks to be a rack of bombs hanging down in the background. They've got the fins and everything. Then you realise our poor victim's test tube also has these fins. So what are these? People bombs? Are the people the payload? It's really bloody weird, but it's so interesting. You know, I bet the artist had just seen that Geiger piece of the baby being loaded into the gun magazine. I don't see any sort of chapter or legion iconography on the Marines, so I can't tell you which Marines they are. I assume it's meant to be a little ambiguous. That's if they even are Marines. At the back of the picture, on the left hand side, there's another Marine carrying a bookshelf. What he's going to do with that, I have no idea. Maybe they've just moved in. To me, this Marine is wearing what I would probably call Mark V armour, but I don't think Mark V even existed as a concept yet, so I'll have to say it's Mark VI with a weird nose. Altogether, it's a bizarre piece, but it's a bloody brilliant one. My first thought when I saw this piece was that we were looking at a navigator. On second thoughts, I think we might be looking at an Eldar, or Eldari as they're now known. The outfit being worn here is interesting. It has these spikes and spines that you sometimes see on Eldar armour, more specifically Dark Eldar. But also Gene Stealers around the same time also had this look, especially the old fat patriarch miniature sitting in his throne. Now it might just be the pose, but I get big alien space jockey vibes from this. Is that all it takes to get the vibe? Just someone wearing weird clothes and laying back in a chair? Again, we have another visor that looks like a big toenail. We saw one of these in one of my previous art videos, although that guy looked pretty normal and was carrying a book. It's a strange piece, but it's also very interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think is going on here.
Now, I think one of the reasons I enjoyed Rogue Trader art so much is the more you look at the pieces, the more things you see going on. It's also weird and strange. It sets up the setting perfectly. Now, before we move on to the last piece, I just want to say if you're enjoying this video, then please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. That means you, Arnold. If you are enjoying the content here on the channel, then please consider joining the Patreon, the link to which is in the description below, or up here somewhere. Alright, let's check out the final piece, shall we?
Now, can you guess who this is? Well, it's actually the Emperor. This here is the original version of him, the first depiction. He looks very different to the current depictions, doesn't he? For reasons unknown, his head is very big and bulbous. Did he have a big head, or is it swollen due to the Golden Throne's effects? As you can see, there's no actual throne to speak of, just a weird device surrounding him. Half of it comes up to his waist, and the other half appears to descend from the ceiling, touching his head, giving him the look of an egg timer. His hands are stuck in very strange looking pipe things, and I for one would not want to put my hands in one of these wet looking tubes. They actually remind me of that scene in Flash Gordon where they have to put their hands in the tree stump thing where that beast lives. It's horrible, but very interesting. Our poor Emperor looks very haggard and very decayed. His skin has begun to rot or fall off in places, and we can see his innards. I can't quite tell if those are biomechanical or just organic. The room itself, I assume this is the throne room, yet again looks like a lot of Geiger's work. This time looking like the egg room where Kane first found the egg in Alien. It just needs that layer of blue mist. By the way, what was that blue mist layer? Was that ever explained? This is a really distorted and bizarre piece, and although disturbing, is fascinating to look at. All that strangeness is probably designed to keep the Emperor alive. It's bloody brilliant if you ask me. In my opinion, this depiction of the Emperor on the throne is far, far better than just an old man on the chair look we have today. This version actually makes more sense in universe to me, and the name Golden Throne is just a nickname for the equipment as opposed to being an actual throne. There is the possibility that the art that we see today is what Imperials see, and it's just a sort of mock-up or facade the Imperium made, and if you go behind the curtain, as it were, this is what you would find. It would be a bit like the Wizard of Oz, wouldn't it?
Some wonderful artwork there. If you want to see some more Oldhammer artwork, then check out the playlist up here somewhere. And as always, thank you very much for watching.